And welcome back to WGN TV Political Report. On Tuesday, an unprecedented scene is going to play out on Capitol Hill. The only American president to be impeached twice will face trial in the U.S. Senate as a former commander-in-chief. Donald Trump will not himself testify when the impeachment trial gets underway. House impeachment managers have asked Trump to explain why he and his lawyers have disputed facts at the center of their case, accusing him of inciting the deadly riot at the Capitol. But it remains unclear how many Republican senators will actually vote to convict, no matter what is said over the course of the week-long proceedings. My next guest is a former federal prosecutor who also serves as a senior fellow on cybersecurity at the R Street Institute. Paul Rosenzweig joins me this morning to discuss what's next. Paul, it's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Yes.
It seems like we were just doing this, a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so now some critical questions people want answers to. Number one, the House invites, Jamie Raskin says, former President Trump, come testify. President Trump says, no thanks. But he's not president anymore. Does the House have the power to subpoena him, and does he face contempt charges if he doesn't?
Yes and yes, but of course, in the end, that'll take a long time, which is to say that he'll resist the subpoena, challenge it in court, and we've seen from the last 4 years how long it is that those court proceedings can take. So even though the House may choose to subpoena him, if he objects to it in court, that won't be resolved before they actually finish the trial. So I think it's pretty much a moot question. But in theory, if they wanted to play the long game, they could get an opinion, get an order from the court, and he would be held in contempt if he didn't show. Just not going to happen, though.
So the senators have all taken an oath. They've signed an oath book basically saying they will be fair, impartial jurors in this case. They're not going to be. Let's just be honest about it. Are they violating that oath, or is that oath just kind of a meaningless thing that they do?
Well, they are violating it, but they are not suffering any consequences of it unless they're particularly religious people who believe that they'll be punished in the afterlife for taking a swearing falsely in violation of the Ten Commandments. But I have unfortunately seen no evidence yet that any voters, and especially any Republican voters, will punish any Republican senators for falsely swearing to their impartiality.
Yeah, that's probably what would matter to them. So let's put on your lawyer hat, as you always have on, and we know that essentially the prosecutors are going to argue here all of the conduct of the president leading up to the 6th, his speech on January 6th and what he did. It looks like the defense is going to argue you just can't go after a president who's out of office, which, by the way, was Mitt Romney's not Mitt Romney, sorry, was Mitch McConnell's doing. He wouldn't allow this trial prior to that. And secondly, he's got the constitutional freedom of speech to say things he truly believes. How do you rate that defense?
Well, in terms of effect, it'll probably be successful because, as we've just discussed, the Republicans have decided not to treat this with the seriousness and horror that I personally think it deserves. In terms of basic law, neither defense is terribly persuasive. The U.S. Senate has a history of conducting impeachments for people after they've left office. And indeed, if they weren't going to do that, then an individual could forestall impeachment and conviction in the Senate simply by the expedient of resigning as soon as he were impeached, which would pretty much frustrate the entire process of accountability. So that argument is neither historically accurate nor legally terribly persuasive. And as for the free speech, we have a long history of free speech in America. That has always bumped up against incitement to violence. And there's a famous case from the Supreme Court last century called Brandenburg versus Ohio that says that incitement to imminent violence is not protected free speech. And, obviously that's a fact-based question, but it seems to me as though the president loses that factual argument pretty clearly as well. He spoke, they rioted. That seems to me a pretty fair discussion.
A few more things I've got to ask you. Number one, they've got to approve intent when it comes to the incitement, and incitement is sort of a series of acts. There is reports that the president watched everything unfold on TV, wouldn't take phone calls, and some say he sort of enjoyed what he was seeing. The the impeachment managers can argue that, but don't they need actual evidence, testimony to say that's what the president was doing? Isn't that the strongest evidence?
Well, that's right. If it were me, I would issue another subpoena to some of the White House staff and ask them, was the president watching on TV And did he do anything to stop what he was seeing? Because you're exactly right. His knowledge of the riot and his failure to take action for the 6-8 hours before he finally was cajoled into giving a statement are the best evidence there is that he both intended to incite the violence and he was glad of having succeeded in doing so.
1 minute left, Paul. Two questions I've got to ask you. Some Democrats have said, even if he's not convicted, which is what is predicted, we could still have that majority vote and keep him from running in 4 years and maybe take away his perks. Do they need the conviction? Is it a prerequisite?
Unclear, never been done before. That provision of the Constitution was used after the Civil War against the Confederacy. Never been done in this way before, so we don't know the answer. I would say that whatever the majority tries will be challenged in court by Trump if he wants to.
And finally, if the impeachment fails, there's talk of censure. Even Senator Dick Durbin, Illinois senator, said, yeah, I might be on board on that. Question is, if they censure him, I always viewed censures as not having any teeth. Can they keep him from running or take away his perks if he is censured?
Again, unclear. I censure you, I censure you, I censure you. Does that mean that you're no longer the host of this TV show? It depends upon whether or not your employers actually change your employment opportunity. The same is true with Trump.
Okay, that's why it's so confusing, and maybe I will get censured. Paul Rosenzweig, thanks for being with me. Always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Always good to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, one more break. We're coming right back.